Hello to everyone who is able to join us today. Welcome to the LACONI technology section presentation. And let me go ahead and share my lovely introductory screen with you. All right, so my name is Jennifer Hovanek. I am the library director at the Calumet City Public Library, and joining me today, I'm the current LACONI technology section president. Joining me today on our presentation is Tony Hahn, who is our planning partner, who is also part of the LACONI technology section. And Gwen Stupar played a huge part, but she is unable to join us today. She is the incoming president of the LACONI tech section. Hopefully everybody has had the opportunity to hear a little bit about LACONI across Illinois. As you know, it is a group that your library become institutional members, and then we put on different events throughout the year focused on different areas. We have youth services, reference and adult services section. We also have programming and outreach sections. I mean, you name it, we got it. You can check out our brand new website at laconi.net and see all of the information there. One of the great things the LACONI Governing Board has decided to do this year is to make all of our current programming available at no extra cost. So there is no ticketing or anything like that. So as long as your library is a member, you can go ahead and feel free to sign up for any of these events. We want to just make sure that LACONI stays relevant and valuable to you during our time of COVID-19 pandemic and our growth towards a new optimal level of service. So if there are times where you miss that ability to sit down together and have a bagel from Panera before a meeting, this is not a bagel from Panera, but it is in fact a fairly good substitute. So for today, we are asking just a few housekeeping tips. Number one, during the presentations, we're asking to please stay muted and to keep your cameras on a lower screen to help our transfer of energy here, as well as utilize the chat box. Tony and I will be running interference at the background for technology questions, so feel free to message either of us directly. This meeting is, of course, being recorded and will be made available on the LACONI YouTube channel, which is also gaining a lot of traction. So if there's anything you'd like to hear today, you can go back there and watch it for the next couple of weeks. We also will be sharing post-presentation some different information from our presenters that they are able to pass along to you, as well as a survey we'd love to have you fill out so we can make sure that we're bringing you the program you are interested in seeing. We'll also have time for breakout sessions and a Q&A session with our presenters towards the end. So, feel free to take those questions and put them together so we can all benefit from the discussion. So the title for today is Nonprofit Partnerships, the Shared Mission to Bridge the Digital Divide. And I am going to go ahead and stop screen sharing so that I can hand it over to Callan. And I will let you all go ahead and do your introduction so as everyone has proper name pronunciation and we give people the respect to have that. So Callan, take it away.
All right, so thanks so much for having us. And I am Callan Bignoli. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am here today as a representative of the Library Freedom Project. In particular, a task force that operates within the Library Freedom Project that's actually about to take a hiatus for reasons we can talk about in the breakout rooms or later, that has focused on digital access and inclusion during COVID-19. And we're going to be talking about a survey that we ran and sent all around the country to librarians and library workers to fill out about how their libraries have kept up with the demand that we assumed increased during COVID-19. So looking at the time span between March 2020 and the present. And I will pass the torch along to TJ, who is also here from Library Freedom Project.
Hi, everybody. Again, thank you for coming and thank you for having us. My name is TJ Lamana, he, him, his, and I am also a member of Library Freedom Project, in the same kind of breakout group that Callan had already mentioned. And we're going to talk about our survey. I'm not going to go too far into kind of an introduction, but we part of what we wanted to do with this survey was turn it into something, again, presentable, that we'll be talking about today, that we can use to help encourage libraries to partner with organizations and figure out how to better serve their communities. So I'm going to pass it along to Megan.
Thank you. I'm Megan Shanholtz, again, with the Library Freedom Project. And yeah, the idea behind the survey was to provide information both for the subgroup that we were working on and for libraries as a whole for, applying for grants, for, talking to funders, talking to politicians, just to give them information about, what libraries were doing in the past year. And then the idea was to move forward to continue this grant on a yearly or anyway. That's right.
I can't tell if I'm having connection problems or if someone else is.
Yeah, I think I'm also having a hard time hearing Megan here. So might just be that her connection is unstable.
Okay. Megan, you might want to leave and come back. I don't know if that would help.
Or possibly turn off your video or something.
Yeah. Well, I think I can just keep on going here. So we, as I mentioned, we are part of the Library Freedom Project, and I'm realizing now that some folks may not know what that is. So let's give you a little rundown of what that group entails. So the Library Freedom Project was founded in 2015 by a librarian named Allison Macrina. And the initial charge of that group was to focus on helping library workers support privacy and anti-surveillance of big technology companies in their local communities, and it was a sort of grassroots effort that evolved into a organization that's now funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and just completed a few years of a cohort model where there were several groups of us who went through the cohort program, and we did like I forget how long it is, basically like a semester length immersive class in partnership with Library Freedom Project and New York University. And we, each of us, Megan, TJ, and I, were in a cohort of the Library Freedom Project. So in the last year or so of the existence of Library Freedom Project, we have had a bunch of subgroups, task forces, committees, et cetera, spin off of the main Library Freedom Project crew. And right now, there are some folks who are looking at the increase of surveillance and academic library technologies. You have us who are looking at the impacts of COVID on digital access, and also looking a little bit broader at the need for universal internet access and technology access in 2021. And some other various task forces and committees have come up and come and gone throughout the last year or so. And we, as a group, were a mixture of some folks from mostly public libraries and regional systems, as well as some academic librarians. And I am the director of a small engineering college library in Massachusetts. And our hope with the survey that we put out into the world was to get a sense of what burdens and what successes and failures libraries experienced in the last year and a half in trying to meet the need for digital access in their communities, while they may not have been fully open, while other sources for internet access or technology access may have not been available to folks. And we thought this was an especially pivotal time to look into this question because so much of the social infrastructure and support that was offered to US citizens during the pandemic was contingent upon having internet access and some degree of computer literacy. And we wanted to assess the bigger picture. We all had our own anecdotes. We all heard from our colleagues and from folks in nearby libraries about how things were going, but we wanted to drill a little bit deeper into these questions. So the Library for Freedom Project Access for All subgroup task force put our heads together on a 13-question survey that we distributed to lots and lots and lots of different library organizations all around the country. We received in total about 470-ish responses to this, which wasn't too bad considering this was a couple months ago. And I feel like, I don't know, personally, my bandwidth for doing anything on a computer hit a real stopping point some months ago. And also folks were contending with reopening around the same time. We wish we had been able to get this out a little bit earlier, but one of the challenges that we ran into that I want to be very honest and transparent about as a part of working on this project is that we are volunteers. We're not a dedicated nonprofit or, we don't have funding or, research assistance or things like that to help us do this work. And so that means that the existence of groups like the one that we created is pretty fragile because if things begin to disrupt the availability of members on those groups, then we run into some trouble. So we have decided to take a hiatus for the time being, but we did want to issue the results of the survey before we decided to do that. So it is in what I'll call draft form because it was pulled together yesterday in the afternoon. And I will show you some of the results during our talk today, but the final report will eventually live on Library Freedom Project's website. I'll touch base with the LACONI folks to see if there's an easy way for us to distribute that out to you. And you would be welcome to share it with anyone. I would just like to have a few other folks look at it before we say it's totally done. We haven't had the chance to do that just yet. So it is in draft form. And before I get into talking more specifically about the data, I don't want to be the only person from our group who is yakking this entire time. So I'd like to pass the mic to TJ and to Megan to see what else they'd like to contribute to the description of why we exist, what's going on with Library Freedom Project, all that great stuff.
So I think Callan did, this is TJ. I kept my camera off for bandwidth issues, just in case. And also my background is just a white painted wall. I recently moved and wasn't able to bring my furniture with me. So, I'm doing this on boxes. I'm glad to be here though. Library Freedom Project as a whole is funded from a couple different angles. But as Callan said, these breakout groups are really these tangential groups of members that have decided to work on specific issues are volunteers. We would have liked to get the survey out maybe a little bit earlier, but everybody has lives, especially during the pandemic. But again, our goal was to really be able to clarify where we as a profession stand in this issue. Something I'll talk about a little bit later is a couple angles of working with some local nonprofits, but also the fact that we have had over the years a much increased demand for access to technology, broadband devices, what have you. But we've also gone through a couple of recessions where our funding has been significantly cut. So when you look at these results, when we talk about how things are progressing, we need to keep in mind that we have to keep the scope of where we're heading and where we've come from. So that's a little more context on kind of what we want to talk about a little bit later. So I'm gonna let Megan add anything that she needs to, and we'll keep on going.
So far, I think everything has been covered. Callan did great on covering the reasoning behind the survey. So I'm pretty content to leave it there for now.
Okay, great. Thank you both. So I will share my screen here, and again, like, bear with us to some extent because I did a lot of this number crunching in the last couple days and kind of threw this report together. So any mistakes are definitely mine. But one thing that I tried to focus on while I was pulling together the results were what I thought were sort of the key takeaways from this, because I think those of us who are familiar with technology services in a public library setting, for the most part, could probably guess a little bit common sense wise with what the answers to some of these questions might look like, especially because I'm sure that a lot of you, if you are library technologists, were out there in the trenches doing this work yourself. And I want to preface that, or I guess append to that, that I was, before I moved on to this position in academia, I was the assistant library director and the chief technology officer for 3 libraries in the greater Boston area. And I have been a public library technologist, and I love library technologists. And I think you all are amazing people doing really important work. So thank you for your service. But also, I know how it feels. Although I was spared having to work as one during COVID, and I just have even more respect for you as a result of having not had to deal with it myself. But my point here is that I think a lot of you who are out there in the field doing this work every day, experiencing the needs of your patrons every day, could probably guess at a lot of what is covered in the survey. But there were some things that I took out of the results that I thought were especially noteworthy. And a note on the methodology of how I coded these results. We decided early on that we wanted to separate out the public libraries from the other types of libraries who responded to the survey. We had asked folks who were serving the public in some capacity to respond to the survey. So they didn't necessarily have to be public libraries. They could be academic libraries that were open to the public. They could be school libraries, things like that. So we wound up with the vast majority of respondents being from public libraries. So that was about 420 respondents. And then we had around 70 respondents from all other types of libraries. And those were chiefly academic and school libraries with some others sprinkled in. So the first takeaway that I thought was pretty remarkable, and maybe not super surprising, but I thought was worth pointing out, is the answer to our survey question 3. And I'm going to start sharing my screen here. So the survey question 3 was, has your library taken steps to increase internet access due to COVID-19? And these numbers here that you see are the public library respondents. So I thought this was pretty, I was surprised to see these numbers. We had 84% of people in this group say no, they had not taken steps to increase access, and 16% said yes. And so I am wondering about a few things that could be kind of examined in a future version of this survey, or something that dug a little bit deeper. Is that because the public type respondents were already feeling like they were doing as much as they possibly could to provide internet access to their communities? Is it a matter of resources? Is it a matter of personnel? Is it a matter of funding? Or do they feel like they were kind of doing what they could do and there wasn't really much else for them to add? And then in contrast to that, I'm going to scroll down here a little and find the equivalent question in the academic and school responses. This is a 33-page report, so bear with me. Here we have 66% of that group saying, yes, they did increase internet access due to COVID, and 34% saying, no, they had not. So I thought this was interesting to think about why that might be the case more so in academic and school libraries, and why it might not be the case as much in public libraries. And I'm going to check the chat here just to see if other folks have stuff to say. So Philip says, we wanted to offer more, but it got held up by admin, which I think is a familiar refrain. And Heather says, perhaps it was due to a lot of buildings actually being closed and staff working from home. That's also true. And Jen says, we tried to here at Calumet City, but we faced AT&T infrastructure issues. We had to wait on them to get items fixed. And I know in my experience as an academic library that we were one of the first in our area to jump on getting hotspots to lend out. And I think this may have been because I had previously worked in a public library where we did have hotspots available for patrons. So I already had contacts. I already had relationships with people at Sprint who made this a lot easier for me. And I also just did it like the minute we knew we were closing. And I'm not sure that that at least around here in Massachusetts, that was a thing that was known as an option that early on in the process. And yes, a lot of folks did have hotspots circulating before the pandemic. I think this is probably more common in public libraries, but that is a little bit anecdotal on my part. So I don't know if that's actually true. And some other things that people have said in the chat here, hotspots are indeed such a valuable resource to share. We saw a lot of people responding to this survey saying that that was what they did in order to bolster people's internet access, was to make them circulatable or to get them into their collection. Tina says we added hotspots, circulated more laptops and tablets through curbside pickup. That's also another thing we saw again and again, whereas the circulation of devices. Simon had said academic libraries needed to switch to distance learning quick. Yes, I think that in our instance, we decided on I'm going to say March 12th, that feels about right, that the school was closing down. And we had never in our institution's history offered even one single class online ever before. So it was a huge transition for us. The internet access piece was difficult for us to overcome, but we are fortunate in that as a part of the scholarships that our students receive when they come to Olin, they get half of their tuition is paid for. They also get a free laptop that they use for their 4 years that they are here, 4 or 5 years that they're here with us. And that helped us tremendously in terms of making sure that people had access to devices, but it also didn't lead us to any situations where the library or a computer lab on campus or something like that had to step in to make those resources available to people. We did at least have those out with individuals already. And I'm going to just read a couple other things in the chat here. We increased our hotspot collection, expanded Wi-Fi speeds in the building, and put a router on the exterior of the building. Wi-Fi extenders were an affordable option once we got the infrastructure update. Smaller expenditure that made a big impact. And then Heather and Jen were talking about how far the Wi-Fi extenders work. So I know that a lot of public libraries in my area decided to do away with it. They had their Wi-Fi turning off at a certain time of day. I know that my previous employer did this. They shut off the Wi-Fi like half an hour after we left. At the end of the day, they decided to leave it on all the time. They did things like extending things into the parking lots. And those were another really common response to how public libraries dealt with keeping up with demand. So to look a little bit closer into the numbers for steps that people took to increase those that need for that access. On question 4 here asked about what services people were starting to attempt to meet the digital access requirements in their communities. And by far and away, the most common answer to this was increased Wi-Fi access and hotspots. I'm not sure, I think a lot of folks here, this was a multiple selection question. So people often chose more than one of these. I don't know how many people meant that hotspots increased Wi-Fi access as well. They may not have, but I think that the two most overwhelmingly common answers to this were that people did increase their Wi-Fi access, typically through extenders, typically from leaving the Wi-Fi on all the time, getting things out in the parking lot, things like that, and hotspots too. I was a little surprised to see that we only had 17 people identify laptops as a thing that they had implemented, but I wonder if that is A, that they had already been circulating those laptops before, so it may not have been new to them, or B, that for some of our fellow colleagues out in the field, they were not able to do this because of cost constraints. And I'll point out a couple other things that I thought were of note. One in particular is that the estimated amount that was spent on trying to keep up with these access needs for public libraries, and this was actually very similar for the academic and school group, averaged out to $5,000 to $20,000, or excuse me, $50 to $20,000, with the majority of the public respondents in that subsection saying that they spent between $50,000 and $5,000, which doesn't seem like very much money. I previously worked in a relatively large library system, and I'm not sure how far that would have gone, but I know that, many of us experienced a lot of budget reductions and other austerity measures while we were going through all of this as well. And another thing to point out that I think is really important for us to note is that a lot of the libraries that responded to this said that they were able to make this work with what was in their operating budgets. They also were very reliant upon, with 171 people identifying, nationally funded grants such as the CARES Act funding. In the 123 for internal fundraising here refers to things like friends, foundations, trustees, and trust funds they may have had on hand. But it does appear that most of the respondents relied on either their operating budget or the nationally funded grants such as CARES. So I think this is important to note because it is reassuring, I think, on one level to see 314 people said that they had the funds within their operating budget to do this. We're looking at 420 respondents. That's actually really not that bad. I had expected this to be look a lot more dire for operating budget. But we do still have that 171 that were reliant on money that might be temporary, might not be something that can that would be available to them next year. And so I think that a lot of libraries are going to find themselves challenged to find operating funds and consistent budget money for some of the stuff they started during COVID. Looking through the other stuff here, I think, this is a really important question that I was actually a little reassured by the answer to. This one was about the assessment of impact that these services had on their community, or these increased services had. And this asked, did the measures that your library has taken meet the digital access needs in your community? We had 60% of respondents said that they had either met needs or had somewhat met them, which is not too bad. But if you do look at this report later on, I'm not going to read out a ton of text to you, but in the additional comments section, which I included most of the free text comments that were posted at the end of the survey into this report. Not all of them, just because some of them were either very close to one another, or for some reason they didn't really fit in with what we were reporting here. Like they were just sort of like a thanks for doing this kind of thing, which is great. And you're welcome, but also not necessarily something to put into the report. A lot of the comments seem to reflect that people don't actually feel this way, or at least the people who wrote those comments don't feel this way. A lot of people said, similar to one of the comments I saw in the chat earlier, that they tried as much as they could, but they just never could keep up no matter what. There's also more than one person who indicated that the libraries and administration was a challenge to them during this, that their parent municipal body was a challenge to them during this, that town IT or some other group like that has technology stakeholder or power over technology in a given location were either roadblocks, or maybe they didn't necessarily understand the need in the same way the library did. So this is there's a bit of a tension between the response that we got to this question and those comments that I think is worth interrogating a little bit more later on. And I wanted to share one more figure from this report with you for now, and then I will pass it back to my LFP colleagues. I think that my key recommendation, and this is just me speaking, this is me editorializing, and others may feel differently about this. I think that the key recommendation I would make as a result of looking at these numbers and hearing the stories that I heard over the course of the last, I keep saying year and a half, but I realize it's more like a year and a third or a year and a quarter, but okay, we'll say 16 months, is that there are libraries that really would stand to benefit from having people on their staff who are looking at inclusion and outreach from a digital or technological standpoint. So in this figure here, we see that 62% of our respondents in the public group said that they did not have someone on staff whose job duties specifically include digital access, compared to 38% that said yes. And 38% that said yes still is reassuring to me. I mean, it's a little bit higher than I would have expected. But that said, I think that there's a big move in libraries right now to focus on digital, or excuse me, not digital necessarily, outreach and inclusion positions that are starting to be created and filled in libraries, but those don't necessarily come with a digital or technological component to them. And I think it is key to sort of link those things up together. That does not mean I'm saying that you need to hire someone who's going to do 3 different jobs at once. In fact, I very much encourage everyone to never do that. We can't keep doing more with less, because that's just less and less and less and less. And it's burning people out, and it's making us incapable of serving our populations in the way that we need to. But we do need to get a little bit more strategic and a little bit more responsive to what we're actually seeing are the needs of our communities. And I think that technological inclusion and access is just a huge, 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 almost universal issue that libraries are in a position of really like having the power to be able to make some real difference about. So I think that, you know, in the report here, I wrote some recommendations in the beginning of the draft. This was like my number one thing that we need to see about how we can get folks with that type of job description on our books. And in my experience as a public library administrator, we were sometimes able to sort of brand or like sub-describe our reference librarians as having jobs that were more specific to things like technology or communications or outreach or whatever. And so I know that's not necessarily a perfect solution or one that's viable for everyone, but I do feel like if we can sort of put some resource into this and have some dedicated folks on our staff to be working on this stuff, especially from the angle of looking to build outside partnerships, that's crucial for our success in this area. I think that I was very underwhelmed by the response I saw in these data about how many libraries had pursued partnerships with other organizations in their communities, nationally or otherwise. And I think we really do need to find ways to build coalitions with other groups that have like-minded service attitudes to try to divvy up the burden of making the internet accessible to folks during situations like these. I didn't mention this earlier, though I think it maybe has kind of come up less obviously, I'm not sure. But part of what sort of initiated this whole conversation in Library Freedom Project was the crunch and the pressure that library workers felt to keep their buildings open and to keep their technological services operating in some capacity, even while it wasn't necessarily safe for them to be at work. It was a very, very scary and very high stakes trade-off for people to make these things available to their patrons. So I think going forward, doing what we can to reach out beyond our four walls is really critical. And to have someone who is helping keep a library on track with this is another thing that I think the value of that really can't be overstated. And with that, I'm going to stop talking for now and see if my LFP colleagues want to chime in at all.
Yeah, I just have a couple things to kind of back up what Callan was saying in kind of personal anecdotal experience and just understanding kind of the needs of the community at large. And one of the things that we've seen, you know, globally really was how unprepared we were for something like this. And then it hit and such a burden fell onto libraries, which is something that keeps happening. We keep having to do more with less. And that just means of all those things that we're trying to do more of, we just don't do them as well. Because you can't actually do more with less. Asking people to take on extra tasks just means that, you know, tasks may not be completed to the best, you know, standards that they should be. You know, I'm not trying to, but what we really need to focus on is what we could have done beforehand, because this issue isn't going to go away. It's just become more apparent. So you have the ability to hopefully partner with local organizations that are already working on this. That was one of the things that our small group was really thinking about, was not doing all of the work from the very beginning when it comes to understanding digital access, digital inclusion, because people have been working on that for decades. So what we wanted to do was find out how we could take all of the information that's already out there, you know, being the good librarians and library workers that we are, is taking that information and turning it into something that we could apply directly to libraries. And think about what you can do, what you could have done, because again, this issue has just been highlighted. It's not, it was always there. It's just more, there's just more of a spotlight on it now. So one of the things that I've heard some library systems, libraries doing is working with local organizations to extend Wi-Fi to underserved neighborhoods using something like a mesh network. So you can see if there are already organizations in your area doing the work that you want to do, which, you know, think about what we're doing. Extending the Wi-Fi into the parking lot is all well and good, but it's really hard for a kid to drag a laptop, sit in a car, and do their homework in the library parking lot, right? Like laptops have batteries and all these other things. So while we're doing what we can, this is another situation where we wish we could do more. And partnering with other organizations, looking at grants is something that's really important right now. The Senate is looking at $1 billion broadband access fund going out, which is all going to be divvied up by grants. There's the Emergency Act that funded Library of Congress for quite a bit that, you know, you can go after. And you can use this money not just to invest in your library building, because as we've seen when the pandemic hit, that the library building may not always be accessible to people. And that may be because the building is closed or because they physically or virtually cannot get there. So we should be partnering with organizations in our communities to extend the internet to every home. And then we have another problem. And I'll try to be quick and succinct about this, is we are lending out hotspots, and that's great. Like, again, I'm not trying to put down anything that we've done, because again, we're doing the best we can under the circumstances. And I think we all absolutely need to realize that and give ourselves credit for that, because it's been a hard, stressful time. And, you know, y'all are here to still listen to us talk about it, which means you still care, which says a lot about you and a lot about, you know, library workers in general. But as we saw from the data, a lot of people were lending hotspots, but very few were lending the devices that people could actually get on the internet with. So you have, again, another part of this digital inclusion problem, where even if you're able to get Wi-Fi into the homes of people, they may not have a device that allows them to connect to it. So that's something else we have to think about, and that's not something libraries can do. If you service a population of 100,000 people, you can't lend out 100,000 laptops. You have to find other solutions. So that's kind of where I want to leave it when it comes to looking outside the library for hope and for organizational power and for helping relieve the burden from just making it a library thing, and to show your support for your community. So thank you.
All right. Are we ready to bring on the speakers from PCs for People? Come on down. You're the next contestant.
Hello, hello. This is Andrea Lindsay with PCs for People. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, and Andrea, if I could just pause 1 second. I hope everybody saw in the chat. I realized I forgot to go over the agenda during my speech earlier. So the agenda for the rest of the day is in the chat, just so you know. Okay, now I'm done. Thank you.
So yeah, so excited to be a part of this conversation. Really appreciate all the information from the Library Freedom Project and the very active chat. I love that. You don't always see that at one of these meetings. So hopefully we can be a part of the solution for some of your communities. PCs for People is a nonprofit organization that is working all over Illinois. So we'll give you some more information about that, and then would love to kind of follow up with folks on some different specific ways we might be able to work together. So yeah, my name is Andrea, she, her. I'm the new markets director for PCs for People. So I got started with our Ohio location, and I've been focusing on Illinois for the last year or so, and kind of building the local team there. And I believe Kayla is here from our local team in the Cook County area.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla Perkins. I'm the Cook County Community Impact Lead. So if you guys need to get connected and we can form some partnerships, I would love that. I'll leave my email in the chat too.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go through some slides. We'll kind of start with an overview of what PCs for People does in general, but I'll try to spend a lot of time talking about some specific initiatives we've worked on with libraries through the pandemic, and some potential next steps that we would love to take with you all. So let's hope I can find the right screen here. Are we good? Everybody's so kindly muted.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Yeah, so PCs for People is a national nonprofit organization, got started in Minnesota over 20 years ago, if you start way back at the beginning, and I'll tell a little bit of that origin story in a minute. But yeah, basically we have expanded to have sort of brick and mortar locations in several different states. And then we also do shipping of computers and also hotspots. Very interesting conversation about those there. I would say I agree with everything expressed about hotspots. We'll talk about that some more. So anyway, that's how we have a national presence, is through online shipping as well. But especially over the last few years, we have been pretty actively expanding to have a physical presence in some different states too. So focusing on Illinois, we are really honored to be a part of the Connect Illinois Computer Equity Network. And I believe it was through this announcement from the state and the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity and the Office of Broadband that we got connected with you folks. So again, just so grateful for the opportunity to kind of share some of our work here and really look forward to building some connections. So the state has this amazing commitment. We haven't seen this from the state government and any of the other states where we work, to really make, computer equity and digital access a reality across the state. And I know there's a lot of different ways that they're working to do that through the Office of Broadband in terms of connectivity. But I think the idea here was to make sure that device access is an important component of that. So the goal is to have this kind of statewide network. We would love to work with other refurbishers. If you know others, we certainly work best in collaboration and partnership. So as far as I know, that network is kind of growing. Folks can reach out to the Office of Broadband to be a part of it. But our goal is to get refurbished devices into as many homes as possible. And we're partnering with, obviously, governmental organizations, and lots of folks, nonprofits, libraries, cities, schools on the distribution side. But private companies and businesses are a really important part of the puzzle as well, because they provide the devices that we can then refurbish. So that's a key part of the Computer Equity Network as well, is bringing in partners to be part of that sourcing solution with their technology. And we have many libraries that have partnered with us to recycle their computers as they're transitioning them out as well. But I quickly get ahead of myself. So let me start at the beginning with kind of our history, then I'll talk through the different aspects of our model and try to get through all of that with plenty of time for us to chat more about Illinois specifics and Northern Illinois specifics, some different ways we can work together. So PCs for People started actually in Mankato, Minnesota. There was a social worker who was assigned to work with a student who had hacked into the school computer system and gave himself all A's. The running joke is that if he had just done B's, nobody would have noticed, and then there would never be a PCs for People. But the social worker was like, well, you clearly have some technology skills. And I think, in the same county building where he was working, there were some old computers. So said, hey, why don't you see if you can fix these up? And the student started building websites for nonprofits in their community. So that was kind of the birth of the idea that, there's often extra computers around that an organization is cycling out for a variety of different reasons. They may have, just need for a minor repair. They may still be working, and an organization is just on a refresh cycle where they cycle everything out every few years regardless. And obviously there's a need to get everyone connected, and that has just been growing and growing over the years. So after kind of being a volunteer run organization based out of Mankato for a while, someone who volunteered with that organization when he was in college, Casey Sorensen, got a degree in tech of some sort. I should probably know what. Went on to IT consulting for a few years, and then decided that he wanted to come back and kind of scale up the PCs for People model. So that's when we became a 501c3 nonprofit, moved the headquarters to St. Paul, and really started kind of scaling from there. And a key part of what he realized right off the bat with that kind of next step up, I think they were like, okay, we've got computers donated, we're going to do a big distribution day, and they were all gone, like 200 in a day. I don't think that surprises any of us now, but back then maybe it was a little bit surprising, maybe shouldn't have been. But he quickly realized that just asking for computers to be donated wasn't necessarily going to address the problem at the scale that was needed. And so the idea was to begin offering really a valuable service to these organizations and companies that have devices that they no longer need. So we've got these logos in the bottom corner of the slide here, the AAA certification from the National Association for Information Destruction. So that has to do with data security on the hard drives. And then the R2 certification is responsible recycling. So that just speaks to, two really key parts of the process. To back up that data security certification, we developed all these systems to track every single device as it comes in, every single hard drive. That allows us to verify that the hard drive was either wiped or destroyed, but also to see, which home that computer goes to, and share aggregate data, obviously not personal information, but if a organization donates 100 computers, we can say, those went to 100 homes with an average income of X, and this many students in the home, that type of information. And we offer that service for free. And we, go handle all the pickups on our own. And so we really try to see that as a valuable service that we offer. On one hand, it's almost like a separate business, right? IT asset disposal. But then it supports our nonprofit mission to get technology access into the homes where it's needed. So just to kind of touch on some more specifics with each kind of aspect of the model there. This is just speaking a little bit more to the sourcing that we do. So that's working with all different sizes of companies, as well as I mentioned, libraries, schools, city governments. We'll do pickups within a 6-hour radius of any of our brick and mortar locations. So definitely anywhere in the state of Illinois, but we're also going up into Wisconsin, kind of all over. And even sometimes we'll go to states that are a little farther out. We just try to sort of find out more about this volume of technology we'd be picking up. We take everything, so not just computers, not just the kind of standard computer accessories like keyboards or monitors. We'll take all sorts of cords and cables, obviously, routers, kind of whatever's in an office setting. We try to draw the line at like microwaves and coffee makers. Those aren't our favorite to pick up, but anything else that's vaguely computer related, we are happy to either reuse it or recycle it responsibly. And so that actually, so we're a nonprofit organization, but we are a social enterprise. And I think that's a really important part of our mission, right? Because the goal is to not be reliant on grant funding to continue to provide the valuable services that we provide for folks. So we, of course, are always looking for grant funding to kind of improve and increase our programs, but we try to have different revenue streams that are sustainable, that are built into our operations, so that we can continue to serve the communities we serve, regardless of which way the funding winds are blowing. So for the electronics that we're not able to reuse, there is some revenue generated through sustainable recycling processes with those as well. And then in that process of, bringing in all the technology from all these different organizations, sorting everything, refurbishing everything, it is a big workforce development opportunity. So each of our locations, and I've got a slide a little bit later that shows you all of those on a map. That probably would have been a good one at the beginning. But each of them has a little bit of a different kind of strategy in terms of workforce development. So we have some locations that work with programs to support individuals with kind of different types of abilities. We have some programs that work with folks returning from incarceration, some where we kind of focus on youth training, high school internships. And in Illinois specifically, we're really still kind of looking to develop those workforce training partnerships. So certainly in any of our locations, it's something that can continue to kind of grow and evolve. But I think in Illinois right now, we're really excited to just kind of set those programs in motion and see what that could really look like in some different local communities. And as far as the environment, I think I mostly touched on that, but yeah, sustainability and making sure that we're not, we're diverting electronics from the e-waste stream is a really important part of our mission as well. So, sorry, I'm just taking a quick peek at the chat here. Yeah, so just a little bit more of like a visual into our process. So our goal is, to really operate at a scale that allows us to be efficient. I think maybe it was TJ who was talking about like, if you have 100,000 people who need computers, I can't say we're quite there yet, but we're looking to get there and to definitely be distributing, hundreds or thousands of computers a month from each of our locations. So we have, automated processes to kind of test everything as it comes in to handle that refurbishing process. And, we put Windows 10 licenses on all of the computers. So we are really proud. We upgraded our status from Microsoft Registered Refurbisher to Microsoft Authorized Refurbisher, which I think means that we are I think the only nonprofit Microsoft authorized refurbisher in the country, and we are able to distribute those licenses to other nonprofits as well as to use them ourselves. So yeah, Windows 10 on everything, and then we do have Microsoft Office Home and Student 2019 that we put on some of the computers as well. And another way that we kind of work with different nonprofits around the country is we do have a software affiliate program. So there are other refurbishers, I would say is hopefully a kind of appropriate broad umbrella term for them. Other nonprofits doing similar things that use our same software for the refurbishing process and potentially for kind of like point of sale management and listing their computers online as well. So when I talk about the Illinois Computer Equity Network and how we're always looking for opportunities for collaboration, that's definitely a part of it too. We're always kind of looking to see who else is doing similar things. But if you know of someone in your area that we might not have connected with yet, we would love to, share any of these kind of tools and resources as well. So in terms of distribution, I mentioned we have these, kind of brick and mortar facilities in several different states. In Illinois, we have one that's up and running in Belleville. And we do have a warehouse right now functioning in Oak Forest. We're looking to have kind of a public facing space in Cook County as well. Then I'll talk more about how we like to have, in-person presence in other counties too. But the plan is to have those two kind of hubs for the state where people can come in. This is a photo from our St. Paul location, but kind of a similar environment, non-traditional retail. So it's a little bit like a computer store, but it's a little bit like a nonprofit or a social service agency. Our goal is to make it not like the DMV, not that we don't appreciate all the wonderful people who help us out at those locations, but we try to meet people where they're at, talk to them about their needs and sort of customize the device access depending on what they're looking to do. And at those locations, we also, can help people get connected with internet service. They can bring computers in for repairs. And we often offer different types of classes and training opportunities in that same space as well. Basically as a part of the Microsoft Authorized Refurbisher program and also for the internet that we provide that I'll talk about in a little bit, we do have some basic eligibility requirements. So the kind of key thing is we work with folks whose household income is under 200% of the federal poverty level. That being said, if we can avoid asking someone to bring in the first page of their tax return, we will. So if they're receiving any type of government assistance that's already income qualified, then generally that can work. We have a long page on our website, pcsforpeople.org/eligibility, that outlines all the different types of assistance program documentation that we can take, but that's kind of the gist of it. And then there's some stats on here about kind of the average demographics that we serve. This obviously changes every year. So I think we're still kind of processing some of the data from 2020, but I wouldn't be surprised if that annual income has gone down and unemployment may have gone up for sure. So pre-pandemic, we would have crowds. Remember that? This looks fun. So we did a lot of partnerships with schools where we would bring, hundreds of computers. We would take care of the paperwork because the school could verify that everybody was involved in free or reduced lunch. And we can do kind of bulk distribution events where we also, people pick up a computer, maybe an internet hotspot, and they attend a quick class as well with just kind of some basics about how to get started with their devices. Todd asked a question in the chat about how we afforded our warehouse. I think I'm gonna just come back to that at the end. I can talk a little bit more about some of our different funding sources, but that is a great question. Thanks, Todd. So yeah, pre-pandemic, we were doing these very big bulk distributions, and we would sometimes go out of state to do them, just kind of pop up in different partnerships with schools and sometimes with other types of organizations as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we also had online distribution. So people can order different types of computers and then hotspots with us, and we ship all over. Internet, I will talk about a little bit. So our first goal is always to connect folks with low cost and reliable service in their community. So if there's another provider that's doing that, we're happy to help people sign up, get people situated, and let them know how to connect to that internet service with their computer that they get from us. We did find that often that wasn't the case, that people weren't finding an option that worked well for them. So we do offer hotspots. A lot of you all who have hotspot programs, you might be working with Mobile Beacon, I would guess, maybe Mobile Citizen. So we partner with both of them. We get hotspots that are on the Sprint/T-Mobile network, and there is a one-time cost for the hotspot itself, which right now is either $60 or $80. It's basically whatever we have to pay for them. We just turn that right around. And then we have unlimited data plans prepaid for $15 a month. So basically it's just month to month. People can decide if they want to pay for that month once they have the hotspot, and then they can kind of turn it on and off as they like. So historically, we've seen a lot of families that maybe use it during the school year and then turn it off during the summer and just kind of skip that bill. We don't have to do credit checks or anything like that. So we found that that works for a lot of people, but especially in the past year, we do see those limitations with hotspots. So certainly with just kind of general reliability, also speed, we've seen that, I think we knew before, but now we really know to the extent to which that's not a great solution for everybody. So we have started exploring some other alternatives. We are starting to operate as an internet service provider ourselves. We're doing that in two different ways. So one is we have started doing some wired networks, specifically with public housing buildings so far. I think we're potentially open to doing it at other sites, but that's what we've got going right now. We have one in Texas, and then we're building a couple in Kansas City. I'm sorry. So yeah, fiber to the home there. And then we are doing something, it's basically a mesh network. I have to admit, I'm not the expert on how exactly to design and build these. But basically we can put a little antenna like this on a rooftop, and it broadcasts a LTE signal, kind of 1 to 2 mile radius, but we can, kind of string them together. So we can sometimes cover a larger area with a couple different antennas. In the home, there's a router that just kind of plugs in, and we are able to offer that service at the same $15 a month, but with much higher speeds, 50 download, and then we control the network, so we can kind of guarantee more reliability with that. It does tap into a fiber connection in that building. So we are starting to do that in partnership with some libraries. That's one of the things we would love to talk to you all about if you're interested. But also with schools, also with housing authorities, with some nonprofits, and often there are local governments that are interested in being a part of that solution as well, because they may have some access to kind of the fiber connections, regardless of where we're actually plugging into it. I feel like there's probably a lot more to talk about with that, but kind of just give you all the breadcrumbs, and then I know there's a lot of great questions, so we'll circle back to some more details, and we've got the breakout session as well. So yeah, one of the ways that we talk about our work sometimes is like the three legs of the digital inclusion stool. So we've got device access, we've got connectivity, but then of course, one of the other things you all are right on the front lines of is the support. So we do that in a variety of different ways. One is when somebody does get a computer or internet access from us in person, we always try to give them kind of a basic orientation to their device, find out what they're going to be using it for, and make sure that they're kind of headed in the right direction. And we do have a variety of different, online resources we can refer people to. So if we're getting them set up, we'll show them, the page on our website or some different sites they can go to watch some training videos and things like that. But we also have, a support phone line. And so we get hundreds and thousands of calls a day that are everything from, I just brought my computer home and I forget which wire plugs in where, to how do I connect my computer to the internet, or I think I might have a virus, what do I do? So we try to just kind of provide that support as much as we can, and then refer folks to other resources when needed. We do try to keep that kind of roughly limited to people that are kind of in our system, because that allows us to track, we can see what device they have, we can keep records of the notes that different people have made, but we are starting to explore some ways that we can offer that type of support for other partners. So we're basically running a pilot program with a group of partners right now, and depending on how that goes, that might be something we start offering in the future, as sort of like taking our call center infrastructure basically and offering it to other kind of client groups in addition to our own. And then we do offer a 1-year warranty on all of our computers. So we'll repair or replace anything. And then we do repairs for computers that didn't come from us as well. So as long as someone meets our eligibility requirements, they could bring a computer that they got anywhere. And we can do low cost repairs. Basically just it's like 25 to 75 for the labor, depending on how complex it is, and then the cost of the parts, which, if we can pull them off a computer we're recycling in the back, we'll certainly do that and do that for free. Or if we need to order it off eBay, then we just communicate with the person that needs the repair about that. In addition to those kind of like individual supports, we do different types of kind of classes and trainings, and that really just varies a lot locally as well. Again, I would say kind of our main thing is we don't want to duplicate what's already happening in a community. So we're always looking to find out what classes are taking place that we can refer people to and kind of work with those partner organizations. But if there's a need for training for groups that isn't already offered, then that's something that we're open to exploring, whether that's hosting it at one of our spaces or, sending our staff to somebody else's space. We're always happy to have those conversations. Here's the map that we wanted to see at the beginning. So we started in Minnesota, we expanded to Colorado, then Ohio, in Maryland, we're in Baltimore, Missouri, that's Kansas City. And then in Illinois, this is the first state where we've had 2 locations. So we're really excited about that. What we call our Metro East hub is located in Belleville, and that has been up and running since November. And then again, in Cook County, we're kind of getting started in a temporary space in Oak Forest, where we are, very much doing all the processing and refurbishing, and we're starting to distribute across the northern part of the state while we continue to look for kind of our longer term home where people can come to us somewhere in Cook County. This is just a map of kind of the nationwide impact to give you a sense of our presence in some places where people are placing those online orders. Okay, now we're getting into some of the library specifics. So I was mentioning that, pre-COVID, we would do these big events where we would go to like a school auditorium or gymnasium with hundreds of computers. Obviously, that was not going to work with COVID. So we started doing kind of a curbside express pickup where we would pull our truck up into a big parking lot off in a school. and people would, line up very patiently. So we tried to keep the traffic flowing pretty quickly, but this is a fairly representative photo here. And often that would be at the same time that maybe the school was distributing meals. So we would have this, folks, volunteers asking people, are you here for food, a computer? Are you here for both? So we really tried to kind of, adjust our operations and continue doing those kind of pop-up events. But we also started exploring ways that people could, continue to pick up technology at a time or a location that was a little bit more convenient for them. So kind of starting in Ohio, and so our headquarters in Ohio is in Cleveland, but then we also do a partnership with the Columbus Metropolitan Library and also with the Toledo Lucas County Public Library System. They were all open to some extent throughout the pandemic. There were definitely months where they were just doing curbside pickup as well, but we kind of got things in place over the summer, and then they were all able to kind of adapt the systems that we had going to kind of continue offering that during the curbside pickup as well. So basically we, box up computers. These are laptop boxes here. So the desktop boxes are a little bit bigger, but we would deliver those, both laptops and desktops, and also hotspots to a library. We arranged it, I think, slightly differently with each of those 3 library systems. So for some of them, we would deliver to specific branches. For some of them, we would deliver to a central location, and then they would distribute out to their branches. And we worked really closely together on the logistics of like how many computers need to go to which branch and that kind of thing. But basically, we kind of stocked them with that supply. And then we have a online order management system, which sounds crazy because if people are trying to get technology access, how are they placing orders online? So we definitely, I see the challenges there. I think it's not a perfect system, but we did see a lot of folks were able to place an order on a smartphone or call us, and then we could basically walk them through it. The eligibility piece is kind of the trickiest because we do need to see people's documents. And so when we have those locations where people can come to us, they just bring in the paperwork and we kind of take care of it there. So when we're kind of handling everything remotely and across a state, that's something where sometimes the libraries helped. They would say somebody can come in and scan their documents here and kind of help them email it to the correct email address. But people couldn't take pictures with a smartphone, or, we try to help folks come up with solutions as much as possible. Something we're definitely open to doing in Illinois, I think, is having our staff, do sort of office hours in different communities and locations so that people could kind of sign up on one day and then come back for the pickup on another day, potentially. We're always looking for new ideas too. But yeah, basically try to get everything taken care of ahead of time. So all the details of setting up an account with us and getting that eligibility verified. And then at the end of that process, someone has an order number. So very similar to, any other type of online ordering system, they just get a receipt saying this is completed. And then we would follow up with them about when and where they could pick up that order. So go into this branch on this day, show them the order number, and we would train the library staff with access to a very simplified version of our portal. So they could just put in that order number or somebody's phone number or their email address, something like that. And then it would pop up, oh, this person is getting a laptop and a hotspot, scan in the barcode off the box and off they go. So that is all still happening in Ohio, and we're starting to build it in Illinois as well. So we have a couple library partners in the northern part of the state that are getting started with this. I think there's 2 that you can sign up for now. One of them is going to start distributing in July, I think. So we're kind of collecting the pre-orders in June, but the other one people could pick up within a few days. And then I think in the southern part of the state, they have a couple in place as well. I sort of skimmed over the 2-location statewide approach. So basically the idea is that the Metro East location is serving, right around where they are and then working their way north. And then from Cook County, we're starting north and going south, and then we kind of meet in the middle. So we're all on the same team, lots of communication. We just kind of strategize about who can get where the quickest and kind of take it from there. So yeah, we're really excited that those are growing, and we would love to talk with any of you all that are interested in that kind of distribution partnership relationship. We definitely are also doing the kind of one-time pop-up events, or I shouldn't say one time, like specific date. You know, we could say we do it once a month or once every 2 months or whatever. We can still do that model where we pull a truck up in the parking lot, and we can do that, both of these really. So we call it like a distribution event or a distribution center, right? So something on a date versus something that's ongoing. We can do those with libraries, but also with other types of organizations. So certainly if you know nonprofits or other folks in your community that would be interested, we'd love to talk to them about that as well. And yeah, in terms of the logistics, we just try to make it as simple as possible. So often what it looks like is just we can kind of work together on sort of some marketing materials, whatever the best way to get the word out in your community is. And we'll put that link and the phone number on there. And then we can kind of handle everything from there. Certainly if folks are looking to be more involved, we're happy to clue you into different steps of the process, but definitely, you know, hear what folks were sharing earlier about everyone already has, you know, 10 other things that are part of their job. So we don't want to really add much to anybody's job here other than, you know, yes, we receive the computers and then a bit of training for, you know, whoever are going to be the people kind of checking out those orders. But we do try to make that as streamlined and simple as possible. And then just one other thing to kind of throw out there, because we just love libraries and working with them however we can. We're also always looking for ways to kind of partner on the digital literacy side of things. So we're happy to share whatever resources you have. Obviously, we provide that support for the folks that we connect with devices. And something sort of related to that, and just a little off the side, in Kansas City, we're starting to do something where a lot of the folks that we're connecting with internet through a couple of different partnerships, we're helping them sign up for library cards as well. So we're open to ideas, I think, is the bottom line there. Just always looking to collaborate, help get people connected, and kind of amplify whatever efforts are already going on locally. So I think I managed it. I got a minute to spare, right on schedule.
Nicely
yeah,
done.
and that's my last slide. So thanks everyone. Hope I didn't throw too much at you too fast. I know I didn't catch the questions, but I think we have a little more time for that later in the agenda. So
For sure. For sure.
now all I have to do is figure out how to stop sharing. There we go.
All right. So this is, thank you both to both of our groups. Again, when Tony and Gwen and I were sort of planning how to, mix these two ideas together, we loved both of them so much. So we tried to, put them together in that partnership aspect, because there's potentials for partnership in so many ways. And we're hoping to help you all enhance maybe partnerships with other interested library technologists that are in the room now with breakout sessions. So we're, the breakout sessions again are not recorded. So that is time for you to speak freely. This is your, LACONI networking time, and just consider discussing how is your institution currently reaching out? What partners are in your own community? Can you see partnering with the two groups we have here today? What did you learn? Just take a few minutes to chat with people. This is also a great time to stretch your legs if you need to, or that kind of stuff. So I am going to turn it over to Tony, and he's going to let us know next steps.
Okay, I'm kind of new to this, so I think it's going to automatically start sorting you. So goodbye.
So I happened to capture 2 questions from the chat previously. So I thought maybe I could put those out to the presenters. And then, if other people need to jump in, or they had any insight from their breakout groups that they think, oh, hey, everybody should know that, please feel free to toss it in the chat. I'm happy to ask that question for you. The first question came from Heather, and she had asked for PCs for people. So when the distribution events are happening, are the families paying directly to the group at that time when they're at the school? Is the payment coming in ahead and it's reserved? How does that part work exactly?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I wish I had a really straightforward answer, but basically we've just done it all the ways. So again, kind of going back to the social enterprise model, we do have a structure that's kind of based off of like people coming to us in that sort of retail environment, where we always have some computers that are free every day And then we have kind of like fancier computers that we ask people to make a contribution towards. So that's usually starting at $30 for a desktop up to $150 for like the fanciest laptop. With the hotspots, unfortunately, we generally have to charge something because that's just cost coming straight to us. Like we have to get them in and we have to pay for the $15 a month. So that's kind of like the underlying structure. But then we always look to get grant funding whenever we can to offer additional financial aid. So that's where with a lot of those kind of school-based, like 400 computers, there would be sort of a sponsor for that event. And so it would often be completely free to the families. I'm so sorry, somebody's calling me on something. Just
That's always how it works, isn't it? When you're in the middle of something, that's
right. I
that's
just
what the
closed
phone's gonna
my,
ring.
my email so that nobody could get to me. Anyway, yeah, midstream, but you all didn't want to hear that ringing. Yeah, so we'll have sponsors for those events. And sometimes that applies for people coming to us as well. Like someone will offer funding for different groups or certain neighborhoods. What we're doing right now in Northern Illinois specifically is we did actually just very recently get a pretty large pot of financial aid. It's going to allow us to distribute between 7,000 and 10,000 computers. It is a slightly more narrow eligibility window than like our PCs for People requirements. So for people to qualify for this financial aid, they have to be under 135% of the federal poverty level, or receiving a more specific list of benefits. So like SNAP, Medicaid, a couple others. If they meet those qualifications, then we can use that financial aid to make the computers either free or $20. So if there are folks who are interested in hosting either an event or an ongoing distribution or both in Northern Illinois, we can talk about making those resources available to folks. The other thing that's going on right now is the emergency broadband benefit. I imagine we're all familiar to varying extents, but we are able to offer those discounts on the hotspots. So there's still like a bit of a cost, usually I think 25 to 45 to get started. But then the service, the $15 a month is free with the emergency broadband benefit. So that's like what's happening right now in Illinois, but hopefully also kind of answers the broader question of we kind of have this underlying structure, and then we're always looking to kind of plug things in to make access as affordable as possible for people, while making sure that we stay sustainable and don't go away after a couple of years when we give everything out for free.
One of my other, this is just a question I wanted to know. One of my other questions is, how did PCs for People end up choosing Illinois? Or like, how do you all decide which states are going to be optimal for your team to work with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So generally, we're kind of looking at need. So sometimes we just look at like American Community Survey data. There is that question about, do you have computer access? Do you have internet? So we'll look at that for different metro areas. But we also, have seen often that need for computer and internet access kind of tracks with areas of higher poverty or participation in other types of benefit programs. So we're kind of looking at those areas around the country. And then it's also just a little bit logistical for us, right? So we've got those trucks going out in different directions. We kind of want to make sure that we're covering all our different potential sourcing partners. And so Illinois is right in between Minnesota and Ohio for us. So it was, kind of geographically a good fit. And also then you go down from Cleveland through St. Louis over to Kansas City, right, for that Metro East hub, but also, seeing kind of the need in the metro areas, but also in a lot of the rural areas.
Right.
And then, of course, I think having that recognition at the state level, the Office of Broadband and a lot of other partners helped us see that other folks recognize that need as well.
We just got a question in the chat from Cindy wanting to know about the emergency broadband benefit. How is the partnership with Cox going on the devices?
Yeah, so man, it can get so in the weeds very quickly here with the emergency broadband benefit, but we're doing like kind of 3 different things with that. So one is we're like operating as an ISP, offering the discount on the hotspots. There's I like an asterisk by that. I could explain what counts as an ISP if somebody wants, but we kind of have our own EBB. And then we do have this partnership with Cox where people who are receiving their internet service from Cox can order computers with us. Demand has been astronomical. So right now where we're at is we are actually collaborating with at least 2 other nonprofits who are using, again, kind of our platform to offer their inventory. So we're kind of sourcing inventory from everybody. And between all of us, we're trying to make sure that we at least have a certain number of devices posted every day. But I'm pretty sure they've been selling out every day. And Cox has been like monitoring. They're sending out notices to their subscribers saying, hey, you can go order a computer. You know, they didn't send it to everybody at once. So yeah, you know, obviously some logistical challenges, but I think broadly just really speaks to the need and what a great resource this benefit is. You know, we'll see how long it lasts and what replaces it and all that.
Did it answer your question, Cindy, or did you have any follow-ups you wanted to toss out there?
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. I think that is a big part. The way we're seeing it in Arizona is we're seeing it as getting so many people to sign up and ask for computers so that the message gets to Washington that this is a desperately needed benefit that needs to be permanent. And so, yeah, so it's really good to hear that you're getting a lot of people getting in line and really making that point. So thank you.
That actually kind of feeds into a question I had seen too about the Library Freedom Project. I know, you know, you've just started crunching your numbers and that kind of stuff, but ultimately, how would, and, you know, Megan or TJ, I think Callan stepped away, you know, ultimately, how would you like to see this data and this information, you know, be utilized, or where do you see this information sort of growing forward to?
I mean, I think our initial goal was to have it available publicly for librarians. That's still, well, and the public. That's still my goal. I mean, it was in the survey that we sent out to people. We said it would be publicly available. We just need to get it finalized and make it available. And I think it's going to be useful data. I mean, maybe it's just because I like data and I like being able to look through things and kind of analyze it. But I think that, and one thing when we were looking over the survey, both Callan and I said, we haven't seen these questions. You know, a lot of surveys went out, you know, we didn't see those kind of questions anywhere else. So I think that it's going to be useful for people when they're, you know, either submitting reports or, you know, writing articles or even talking to, you know, legislators to be able to say, hey, X, whatever, you know, whatever they want to pull from that, I would like to make that available for people to use. That's my goal for it. And also, you know, depending on everyone's bandwidth going forward, you know, I would like for this to be an annual thing just so that we have, again, more data to pull from. I just like the data.
I see. Yeah.
But yeah, so that is ideally what I would like to have happen. TJ, if you have anything to add to that, feel free.
No, I think that's exactly it. The goal is to get it on Library Freedom Project's website. All of the resources that are, you know, the majority of the resources that we create are available to the public. We want people to be able to access them. We believe in this kind of transparency where people are honest about their organizations and can reflect on where they're coming from. So, you know, our sample size was around 470, which is, I think, you know, commendable. So we have a basic idea of where we are as a field. Obviously, we'd like to expand this, encompass more data. Like Megan said, more data is always, almost always good. Maybe no. So we'll hopefully have the additional resources where we can point out the need. But we also, again, and I want to reiterate this, is working with other organizations so we can show the need, not just through the library. We have showing that, you know, not only are we working with our community, but we are kind of stepping out of the building itself and looking at long-term solutions rather than things that we just need to do because they have to happen. So I think it adds a lot of foresight. So the ability to make this annual, to give it to libraries, to show, other organizations the need for partnership, I think is another goal of why we decided to put this together, and the goal of making it public.
Yeah, that's so it's, somebody referenced it before in the chat as well about how librarians often have a capacity issue, right? We don't like to tell people no, we don't like to say, I don't know something. None of us are in libraries because, for laughs and giggles. We're here because we like to achieve, we like to do things, we like to help others. And it's challenging to have to say, hey, we know this exists. And we know maybe that we are not the right people to do it, but how do we connect the resources and the groups together? And, hopefully that's something that's happening today, number one. Number two, hopefully the Library Freedom Project and PCs for People get a ton of traffic to all of your websites today. And tomorrow and every day after that too. Yeah, I think those were the other question I think you might have answered was about like the warehousing and the distribution stuff. But I think, did you answer that in your small group, Andrea?
I think the question about how we pay for the warehouses.
Oh.
Yeah, so in terms of like our locations that you saw some of the photos of, where like, the Belleville location, I think is close to 100,000 square feet. Some of them are down to like 20,000 is also works. We just happen to find a really big building there. Yeah, so we have, just had to do that on a case-by-case basis with each expansion kind of from our program funds. It's budgeted. If it's a lease agreement, it's budgeted into the operations for that location. If it's a purchase, it's us kind of looking at what we need to do. That is kind of the trickiest piece of the puzzle as we expand going forward. We have a pretty clear sense of like our startup operations costs, what it takes to get to a point of financial sustainability with our social enterprise, but real estate is the big question in each market. So sometimes we're thinking about if, a capital campaign or something is a good step for that. But we also, always looking to collaborate. When we got started in Cleveland, we were renovating a building that we had purchased, but we were temporarily operating out of, we had like rented a little storefront, where there's like 2 stores and an apartment over the top. So that was like our retail space where people came to see us and got computers. And then our storage and refurbishing space was an old school where we like stored things in the auditorium and refurbished in one of the classrooms. So we'll do what we got to do. If anyone knows anywhere in Cook County, let us know. Look in.
Are there any other questions or any last kind of final thoughts or comments that we want to offer to our speakers or anything along those lines?
I just wanted to throw out again that once we have our findings in some kind of finalized form, I think, why don't I reach out to you, Jen, or Gwen, and we'll see if you guys can just put it out there for the folks who came today. And then also, I'm hoping like that we can collectively sort of share it widely into the world, because I'm sure that TJ and or Megan probably said this while they were talking, but I would really like to make the public aware of the role that libraries play in this, because it seems clear as day and very obvious and very lived experience to all of us, but I still think that there's a large amount of people who are outside our field who don't really understand just what is at stake and why we are sort of like the bulwark that's keeping the lights on in this way. So anyway, it was lovely to have this opportunity to evangelize it a little bit, but having people to like kind of carry the torch along and like, talk this up and all that good stuff is also really helpful. So thanks again for having us. It really was a good time.
Yeah, I think too, at the end of the day, what LACONI's purpose is truly to connect people to these exact moments, right? These exact pairings and partnerships, because none of us wants to feel like we are the one person doing the one thing. And, you know, while LACONI is a membership-based group normally, you know, this year is a little bit different. Again, we try to keep our, what we're giving back and what we are offering worth more than what we're actually asking people to pay in. So yeah, if there's ever a time where, you know, you want us to share some survey data, share even the link if we do the survey again, you know, TJ had mentioned and Megan had mentioned doing it again in the future. LACONI technology section is a great group of people to route it to. So feel free always to send it forward. We'll take care of you for sure. All right, well, as just let's take a second to kind of wrap everything up here. Thank you so much to our presenters today. Both the Library Freedom Project and PCs for People have things that they can offer to libraries. It sounds like they would both be super happy if you would share their information forward. So please do that for them. Do your information professional thing. And then LACONI will be sending a survey to each of you to kind of make sure, hey, is this the content you're looking for? Is this how we can continue to, you know, like I said, make your membership worthwhile? And then we will be hosting other events for other areas of your library. So again, hit up laconi.net, take a quick look at the things we have available from circulation to, you know, youth services. We have every single area. And technology section, I'm just going to take a second to talk about how great we are, because we have people who are in administration, we have people who are in youth services, people who are MLS, non-MLS, people who are in, you know, every single department. And that is, you know, that's what we need to recognize, right? No one of us is the epitome. All of us together is the goal. So come back, join us. If you're interested in being on a LACONI board, I'd love to have you. And Tony, am I missing anything? Because I totally missed the agenda before. Check
No, I
me.
think you got it. Yeah. Thanks to everybody for joining us today. And I can end our recording. Thanks for that outro, Jen.
Yes, awesome. All right, and keep your eyes peeled for the recording. Visit the LACONI YouTube channel, and you know, find something great.
All right.